Hi everyone, I'm Valerie. I wanted to let you know a few great ways to get into legs up the wall. I've been thinking about November as a time of year that just can have a lot coming our way, especially this year, I believe. But legs up the wall is this incredible pose. The benefits, the payoff to giving yourself some time to be in the pose can really help manage November in general. So here are a few ways to get there. So if you have wall space, and I know that that can be a luxury, especially if you live in a smaller space. If you need walls, if you don't have wall space, I'm going to give you a couple options a little later. But if you have wall space, probably the trickiest part is to get your legs up the wall, right? And then what I would recommend that if you're going along with me throughout this whole tutorial is to have a cushion, a blanket, and a block. So you definitely want a block or something solid that you can elevate the hips. The block and the bolster or cushion could be interchangeable in a moment, as well as the wall portion of this can be substituted out either cushion or folded blanket. So I just know my preference in my body is to have a blanket, but you may have to figure out what is the best fit for your body. Legs up the wall should feel at ease in your body. Of course, it may take a while to get there, but what I would say is that it shouldn't be painful or sharp, and so that's where it might be worth it to test out the different options as you're figuring it out for your own practice. So I have my blanket nearby, and I'm just going to set it aside where I'm going to have reach to it. I'm going to sit one hip right next to the wall. You could even have the legs straight out. So to get up to the wall, you want your hip to be pretty close to the wall. It doesn't have to be touching the baseboard because you'll be probably navigating moving forward or back or closer to the wall or away from the wall in a moment. But usually you can get pretty close, right? If you can straighten out your legs, you can have your hip pretty close to the wall because they should be able to pretty comfortably go straight up the wall. And it's a sort of pivot on your seat, right? So as you come to the wall, you're going to roll down and swing the legs up. There we go. So now this should be the exploration here. First exploration. If you send your legs straight up the wall and your hamstrings are telling you don't do that, of course don't, right? Bend the knees. Give your hamstrings a good rest. You can still have the legs a little straighter. What I would suggest is to move your seat away from the wall. So it might just feel like you'll be an inchworm, but you scoot your seat, your shoulders are going to crawl, scoot away from the wall, and then you might get that nice legs up the wall position. And next is if you are very concerned or feel some pressure to the back, that's what we want to address next, and that's where you do the cushion or the blanket. So I have my folded blanket, and I know, again, just from practice, I like about 1.5 inches or a pretty tight fold underneath my hips. So I want to bring my feet flat into the floor, into the wall, and then just lift up my hips enough to be able to scoot that blanket underneath and lower my hips down. So where should the blanket or the cushion be? It should be where, kind of like, I always like to think of it, and this is more like accessory or clothing related, but kind of where your waistline is. So if you're wearing pants that sort of fit at the waistline, kind of across the belly button usually, that's kind of where you want this blanket to give you the most sensitivity or support, right? Because we're trying to get support to the spine. If you have the firm cushion, right, there's going to probably be a sense or desire to have your seat on there like you would be sitting on it. I'd recommend to feel like you're more on the edge of your seat, right? So that bolster should be a little higher up, and so that your seat, not that it'll hang off of the bolster, but it should be, again, very supportive to the low part of your back. And then again, you might have to make adjustments where you either move your body closer, further away from the wall, and then you make sure again that your hamstrings don't feel pulled or stretched, and then you might be complete for legs up the wall. If you did come to my class this week, or if you've been to my class where we did the wall class, you know that there are about 6-7 different postures, or we could spend a big chunk of a class in this legs up the wall format, doing a few other variations and other poses. And so just know that you can stay here plenty of time. It's a very low stakes inversion, right? Your hips are just a little bit above the heart. Really good for our system. The legs above our heart, it helps our lymphatic system, our nervous system, just all around. It's really good for our body. And if you are caught up in the busyness again of kind of November, this is a great pause for your day. So feel free to take all the time you want here. We're probably going to be together for this video for about 5 to 10 minutes, but you could spend a lot longer if you have it available to you. It's so good for your body. There's one posture I get to. This is the one I get to. All right, so hopefully I have you set to stay comfortable and be able to stay in legs up the wall for some time. Now, if you've been here and something that comes up for you is that it feels like your body is sort of giving you strain or pressure, right? Like some of your tissues shifting and you're not able to breathe. I'm going to take a moment before we get to the block and the up the piece of furniture versions to give you a tool for that. And then finally, to get off of the wall when you're ready, I find sliding the knees down towards the belly can feel really good. And don't be afraid to take your time in each of these sort of transitions, right? So I brought my legs down the wall. I'm going to pause here for a few breaths. And then you want to come to your side. Right? You can even leverage. You can put your feet into the baseboard or into the wall still. And then whenever you're ready from there, you can roll all the way onto your side. Stop along the way whenever you'd like, and then eventually make your way up to a seat. And then one way I like to complete that practice, if you still have some more time, is sitting now close enough to the wall where you can rest your back into the wall. And then you can stay here for a meditation or just a way to set up your day or wind down your day, however you'd like. Now, if you found that you were feeling a little limited in breath, a few things you can do. I think a lot of times we think about putting something underneath the head and the neck, and I would say that that would probably not make that feel better for you. But sometimes what can happen is there's nothing that stops extra tissue to sort of come forward towards the chin. But I do find if you have a yoga strap, now I didn't mention that you necessarily need that for this practice, but you could have a strap or a band, and what will feel supportive is if you just kind of hold everything sort of away from that part, the upper neck. It'll sort of block or hold everything kind of up in place or away. That should open up your breathway. If you have questions and then you just loop the strap, or you could tie something around here if you don't want to do the loops or the ties. So I just want to mention that it's worth, again, giving yourself the afforded comfort that you need to be able to enjoy the posture. You should never suffer through in any capacity to get the benefits of yoga practice. So just wanted to make that of note. All right, so then next is if you have a piece of furniture. So I guess it's a little bit of a stack over here, but I have my meditation chair, which is a little bit lower piece of furniture than like, say, a couch or a recliner or whatever chair or furniture that you have in your room. But just pretend, if you want, that this is, like the height of a couch edge, and you don't have wall space. Hopefully you have a piece of furniture, and if not, maybe you're just like me and sit on the floor all the time. But yeah, so what you can do is almost the same setup as the wall. You bring your hip to the side, and you're going to do that pivot and shift to get your legs to rest on top of the seat of the chair, right? So you'll swing around, come parallel to the chair, and just drape your legs over the chair. So you're still getting that same benefit. In fact, you usually get a little bit more room for the hamstrings and for the back when you do this sort of furniture kick up with the legs. So I would recommend that if you really just want the benefits of like giving your feet a rest, or don't want to fuss with too much of like coming forward and coming away, like the piece of furniture can be a really good way to access legs up the wall, and without sometimes the fussiness of the wall setup itself. So this is option 2. Again, hopefully you have a piece of furniture that this might work well for, and then you come off the same way, draw those knees in towards the belly, and come over onto your side. Take all the time that you would like, and eventually come back up to a seat. And then you can, again, kind of, depending on where your furniture or how sharp or rounded it is, you could lean your back into there and also kind of lean into it to close that practice for yourself. Finally, if you just don't have access to anything that you can kick your legs up or over, but you have a yoga block, say, or a bolster, you can use those things to sort of replicate legs up the wall. Now, I would say that for the nervous system, this is not quite as down-regulating as the legs up the wall and the chair option, but it still is really good for our lymphatic system. So to set up this safely, one thing when we do elevate the hips without support behind the legs, so you do want to make sure that your gaze stays upward. So we're going to set this up almost like we're setting up bridge pose. And then you want to bend your knees and bring your feet flat to the floor. Maybe even try to walk those heels in towards your seat a little bit more. And then at a time that feels right for you, you'll lift your hips up, slide your prop underneath, whether it is a bolster or a block, and then you lower your hips down onto that support. So again, where does this land? Sacral spine. If you're looking for kind of a landmark, usually where pants are buttoned. I know a lot of us are wearing like more stretchy pants or high-waisted pants these days. But yeah, I almost kind of think of it as if you would create a circle or draw a circle to your back, starting from the belly buttons, kind of about right there. If it's too low on your seat, you're going to wobble around and possibly fall off your prop. If it's too high up, it's probably not going to feel very good for your spine at all. It's just going to be really sensitive. And then from there, right, so supported bridge, this is a version of legs up the wall, especially if you feel very unsteady thinking about lifting the legs up to the sky. If lifting the legs up to the sky seems like something you want to do, you send those legs up. One thing about this, because it is a more restorative posture, is you want to make sure that you're not efforting the legs up, right? So if you lift the legs up and you can feel like your quads and hip flex, you could feel a lot of like activity in the muscles and like effort to keep the legs up, kind of like you're feeling like you're doing Pilates or something. You want to try to change that, right? So ways to adapt this so that you can really make this effortless is if it's like a real effort to straighten the legs. No, you don't have to. You could be in more of a knees bent position here. And then you have usually a little bit more way to change the angle from the hips that kind of gets you to this, I don't know, I just call it like a zero gravity position. So if you kind of draw your knees towards your belly and away, there'll be a place where it's almost like you don't have to effort at all. So I can achieve that too with the legs straight, but you might want to start with the knees bent to try to find that. And then again, just trying to get to the space where you can let any effort go. Now, if this feels really delightful for you and you are a person that likes to move, like you can move this around a little bit, right? You could do the straddle. You could just kind of do some gentle kicks that will also feel good in the air. You could do bound angle in the air. You could do like a helicopter, right? So you could do this. What this does is it does give, if you have a really busy brain and like moving your body would help your brain be a little bit more still, this might be the version you want to try. All right, then coming off of this, again, hug the knees in. What I would suggest, just to protect your back, is lower one foot to the floor first, then the other. And then again, just making sure your gaze is still up towards the sky. Lift your hips up just enough to either push that prop forward or back out to the side. Lower the hips down onto the mat. You can stay on the back for a little bit. That's probably going to feel really good coming off of the prop to just lay on your back. And you could do any close to your practice here or go right into a Shavasana. You could also do any of those other options talked about with coming up to a seat and leaning against something to close out your practice. So what I would suggest that for a very, very simple pose, this was a very, very long video, but this is probably how long you should consider, if you can find it in your day, doing a legs up the wall practice. If you have any questions though, of course, just let me know. Be well.